Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, have your notes out, ready to go. We're going to be continuing looking at the events leading up to the Berlin Wall crisis and see how that plays out. I've already posted the CNN Cold War video to watch. You'll see that my notes will go along very closely with that. And if we have time, I'll play a clip, as much as we have time for, of John F. Kennedy's speech at the Berlin Wall, where he encouraged the West Berliners by using the German language, which I studied when I was in high school and in college a little bit, right? And even if you don't know the German language, that's what you have White House staff for. They come up and they come up with really cool things in your speeches, and then you say, raise your hand if you can tell me, what did John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy, tell the West Berliners? Nobody? Do you know? Actually, let's see if you can pronounce it. If you guys know, obviously it's like, well, you can't take German and did you guys pick up any? Here we go. Can you pronounce that? Want to give it a shot, Ellie? That's actually very good. Ich bin ein Berliner. Yeah. Which translates to I'm a Berliner. Okay? Ich bin ein Berliner, which basically it's kind of like, you know, I'm with you. I am with you. You're not alone. We are with you. We got your back. No, he gave a whole speech. Yeah, he gave a whole speech. And actually, I think he said that twice. But, I mean, people love that. People, and they're like, he's speaking our language. And some people are like, he said he's a donut? No, he did not say he's a donut. Okay? He did not say that. Okay? He had a good translation, and he conveyed that to people. Actually, raise your hand if you can tell me. And this is like, he gave this speech right by the Berlin Wall. Can anyone tell me what later president, near the end of the Cold War, also gave a speech at the Berlin Wall and made a specific reference to the Berlin Wall? And he referred his statement to the leader of the Soviet Union, who at that time was Mr. Gorbachev. Nobody knows the rest of that statement? It was Ronald Reagan. He was actually starting to get along really well with Gorbachev by that time. We covered this in 10th grade. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. You remember that? And did the wall get torn down? Yes, and they took all the pieces and they put it up between the United States and Mexico. Just kidding. Okay, different wall, different issue, and so forth. Okay, but walls are very, very important in history. I'm just kind of curious. How many of you guys have walls or fences or some kind of barrier between you and your neighbors? Okay, it's actually pretty common. Jack, you guys have? You do? Okay, who built it? You don't know. It's like, yeah. It's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's like sometimes it's like the first one who moves into the neighborhood and then it's there. Sometimes if they move in the neighborhood at the same time, it's very much a wall thing. Where I was growing up in Arlington, Virginia, there weren't too many walls or fences and things like that. And as a kid, it was great. Because we just like go through all these neighborhoods and it was just ease of transit and so forth. But I mean, how many of you guys want like neighbors' dogs and so forth coming into your property? You do? You don't? Of course not. You do want their dogs to come and do their business, right? Yeah. Anyway, so people say it's like good fences make good neighbors, but do any of you have, yes? All the fences are electric. Whoa! That is because, and that goes to my next analogy. How many of you, your fences, your walls, your hedges, are defense fortified? So that if somebody tries to cross over into your territory, they're dead. How about this one? How many of you guys have fences? Here's one. Maybe an electric fence that prevents something living on your territory from going over and out of your territory. Do you have electric apparatuses, little collars strapped to the children? Oh, we don't need a fence. The kids stay in the backyard. You know, if they go too far, it's, you know, that's actually illegal. But how many of you guys know anybody that's like had an electric fence for like a dog or something? You do? Okay. So For their pigs, yeah. I mean, because they'll go wandering off. They're like, nah, looks good, yum, 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 and they'll just go, 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 go. But nevertheless, we're going to continue with our notes and so forth. Let me just say this. I'm glad you're here, and I wish all those of you guys at home very well. Stay healthy. I guess there's going to be more of you watching the videos in order to get that part of the instruction. North Stars Elementary is closed down. You guys know that. And the restrictions as far as things to try and keep us healthy and so forth are quite a bit more pronounced. Hence, I am wearing a mask because the directive is you must wear a mask. Although my doctor was like, wear a shield. That's a reasonable alternative. Because I've discovered, actually, you guys were like, you didn't know that already, Mr. Henson? You talk a lot. And you talk loud. You talk with volume. You talk with emphasis. I teach like Ellie plays volleyball and Tara plays volleyball. And you can't play volleyball with a mask, can you? There's no masks in volleyball. There's no crying in baseball. But there needs to be a mask in teaching because that's the directive. But when I was wearing a mask yesterday and so forth, I mean, I literally was like, I was feeling like, I shouldn't use the George Floyd analogy, but I'm like, I can't breathe, Okay? Now, you be careful. Yeah, it's like that is, yeah. The guy who did that to make George Floyd not breathe, yeah, he's facing serious criminal prosecution right now in the state of Minnesota. And you're like, yeah, it's called justice. You need to follow the rules, everybody. Oh, I don't know. So does that mean that you can arrest somebody who's on drugs and stick a knee in their back and make them die? No. Yeah, it's kind of like, should Kennedy have been shot because he cheated on his wife? No. What, Kennedy shot? Yeah, his wife was behind it. No! That's another conspiracy theory. No. So anyway, here's the deal. And some of you guys are looking out for me. Daniel, thank you for the apparatus and so forth. I'm still using one of mine here. And but I have to pull it away. Terry, I have to pull it away from my mouth as I'm teaching. I need to talk. And when I talk, I talk out. And then I need to breathe in. And if I can't breathe in, it's bad, right? 9 out of 10 doctors say lack of breathing is deadly. I don't know what the other doctor was saying, but I mean, that was ridiculous. Okay, so anyway, explanation? Shall we continue? All right, some of you guys have meetings. I've got one. I'm ready for your meeting. We got it going. No. That's after school. And actually, I got 2 of the green team signed up for today. Nobody else in here signed up for today. Jack, Mia, Melody, and Daniel back to back on Friday right after school. So, yes. Yes. Yeah, there's actually nobody signed up for tomorrow. It's like people are signed up for the later times. I would have thought you wanted to get it taken care of as soon as possible. Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't know, it's on the paper. You better know what date you did it because oh, okay, right, because of games. You guys got a lot of games. You guys are winning. Way to go. Oh, winning streak. Let me see. Wednesday, yeah, 3:50. Okay, so next week. And Ellie next Wednesday at 2:50. And Trenton next Wednesday at 3:10. Because that's when you signed up. Do you have it? Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can change. There's other spots if you wanted to change it. Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. Questions? Okay, so we'll be ready for yours. And I got a couple other ones to get ready for as well. So, okay. And if you haven't turned something into me, make sure that you get it anticipating so that I can go over and look at it and so forth. Daniel's like, you're so funny, Mr. Hanson. Yeah, if I'm going to give you feedback on a paper, I want to be able to look at the paper before I give the feedback. I know, A before B, then C. Okay? All right. So, I put this slide up here as a reminder, added it to it because I know that some of you guys were like, where was Berlin? Berlin is definitely, most clearly, stuck in the heart of East Europe, or excuse me, East Germany, which is controlled by the communists, right? You got Soviet troops there, and you have the East German communist government there. Got it? All right, so let's look and see how this plays out. Khrushchev, in charge of the Soviet Union, wants the Americans, the British, the French to leave East Berlin. West Berlin. Okay, the Americans aren't in East Berlin. The Soviets are in East Berlin. Stalin wanted the same thing in 1948 and blocked off access to West Berlin. Blocked off land access, blocked off water access via canals. But was Stalin willing to shoot down American planes, British planes, and so forth as they flew over to break the blockade? No. Well, here, Khrushchev is not really happy about how that's going because, make sure you write this down, there will be no more blockade. American, British forces and so forth are going to be able to have continual access. So West Berlin, even after the wall is built up, is still going to be able to have that access, that food and coal and whatever kinds of things are coming in and out of it. So what is going to get blocked off? The East German people. Write that down. The East German people are going to be the ones that are blocked off. Although you could also say some of the West German people, West Berlin people, because they did have access to go to East Berlin. Before the Berlin Wall went up, if you lived in West Berlin, you could travel to East Berlin and vice versa. Yes, Daniel? Both. They want it. I mean, it's kind of like they look at the map and they're like, it's so untidy having American, British, French forces, 12,000. That's not a lot, It's not like they're a huge real threat there. But they're like, let's just have it. Well, I mean, in one regard, perhaps. But it's like, get this first. It's sort of like, if you're the People's Republic of China today, would you like to have complete, absolute control over all of your territories? Sure. Well, what are your territories? Is Hong Kong? Well, Hong Kong's a special relationship. Well, what's happening to Hong Kong right now? That special is starting to go away, and the Chinese Communist government is exercising authority over that. So that's one part. Will they have the same attitude toward Taiwan? I mean, I think it's not fair to say that the Chinese are interested in taking over the entire world. So Daniel, to your point, the Soviets may be interested in having more control over all of Germany, but they're putting pressure right now on Berlin. Okay? The United States, Britain and France and so forth, West Germany for that matter, are saying, no, we're not going to leave Berlin. So that's kind of a done thing. Write that down. You are not going to see a resumption of like the blockade. But here is the more pressing issue. Okay? This is kind of the thing that underpins the crisis here. East German people are not only traveling to West Berlin to buy groceries, and you can get better stuff. Did you get that message quite clearly when I taught, like, in the 10th grade about how I ended the Cold War and stopped communism in the Soviet Union? I mean, I didn't. But it actually had to do with sort of the economics of it. I could buy guitar strings in this country, piece of cake. Did they have an economic structure in the Soviet Union where people could just go as a consumer and get what they wanted? No. Soviet economic system doesn't provide for that. Does the capitalist economic system provide for that? Yeah, where there's a demand, if the price is right, you're often going to get that supply. So where could you get, by let's say the early 1960s, where could you get good stuff? In stores, where could you get good stuff? West Berlin, East Berlin? West Berlin. Got that? Okay. So that was an issue. You had people, and they had the right. If you were a Berliner, you had the right to go from one to the other, to the other, to the other. But here was where things were really falling apart for the East German government, and they kept complaining to the Soviets, you've got to let us do something about this. Young families, particularly professionals, doctors, engineers, lawyers, people with skills, mechanics and so forth, they were leaving East Germany. That is a critical thing. They were leaving East Germany. And what was the West German government's position as far as like immigrants coming from East Germany, East Berlin, into their own territory? Would they accept them? Make sure you understand this. This is a really critical component. Would the West German government take in any immigrant from East Germany or East Berlin, what have you? Would they take them? Yes. Yes, they would. Because they would say, you are leaving, fill in the blank, a difficult political situation and a bad economic situation. You know, some people left East Germany because they didn't like the politics. They wanted to have more freedom. But another main reason they left is because they wanted an opportunity to be prosperous due to the hard work that they had and have their kids grow up in a more prosperous society. Was there a difference by the early 1960s in East Germany and West Germany as far as prosperity? Absolutely. Which one was more prosperous? West Germany, okay? So this is a problem. This is an ongoing problem. And Khrushchev ultimately allows East Germans to carry out what they see as the solution, okay? But it isn't, he doesn't do that first. At first, as you see from the video, and I've told you before, at first he kind of tries to bully Kennedy. Remember, I gave you that whole thing about Kennedy. Tara, what did Khrushchev think as far as Kennedy? Was he up to the game, up to the job of being president or not? He thought he was up to the game? He was sort of like, I respect you, Kennedy. Man, you're like, you're a military man and you're tough and I'm not going to even try and like bowl you over. No, he didn't respect him, right? In fact, that was part of the reason I did that whole thing, like, he hangs out with Hollywood people and he's all, very attractive and people are like, ooh, Kennedy. I mean, Khrushchev's like, whatever, Kennedy. I'm going to bully you over. Well, at the Vienna summit, did you have that written down in your notes? Okay. You want to write that down. This occurred early in Kennedy's presidency. I mean, Khrushchev had been the leader of the Soviet Union, for going on about 8 or 9 years by that point. Okay, so Kennedy, in June of 1961, he'd only been president for less than a half a year or so. In June of 1961, there was a summit. Now, don't think there's a mountain. A summit is like a gathering of top leaders, in this case, the United States president and the Soviet general secretary. And they had it in Vienna, in Austria. It's like a neutral country, and Vienna's a good city. It's really cool, lots of cool hotels and everything. And ostensibly, they're there to discuss various different matters. Now, we look at summits throughout the Cold War, and sometimes summits are really important. Sometimes summits can be very important. Like when Nixon showed up in China, they had a summit between Nixon and Mao. That's going to be a big deal. A lot of work had been done ahead of time to reach agreements so they could sign the agreements at the summit. Everyone goes, yay, oh, that was successful. Sometimes if you don't do your homework ahead of time, you get two top leaders showing up and everyone's like, well, what's going to happen? Khrushchev at the Vienna summit thought that he could, in a sense, bully Kennedy from backing down on a number of things, including continued support in West Germany and West Berlin. Kennedy picks up on this, and Kennedy has to get really tough. He's like, nope, nope, nope. And in fact, some people look and they say, well, Kennedy maybe had to act even tougher because Khrushchev thought he was going to be too weak. Probably the biggest test of this is going to be the next year, 1962, where Khrushchev will go, I don't think Kennedy's going to do anything if I put forward-based nuclear missiles in Cuba. How's Kennedy going to respond to the Soviets putting forward-based nuclear missiles in Cuba? He's going to flip. He's going to send the United States Navy to quarantine. They call it a quarantine. Yeah, it's like if we did quarantines like with the United States Navy, we almost went to nuclear war. And some people say, well, part of the reason we went to nuclear war is because Khrushchev misunderstood Kennedy as being a pushover. Okay? And that was the real test. The Berlin Wall thing isn't as much of a test. But basically, Khrushchev ultimately relented to the East German leadership and said, all right, fine, here's the solution. You don't want, it's kind of like a brain drain, a talent drain. I mean, older East Berliners were staying because they were receiving pensions and so forth, and maybe they're just like, it's too much trouble to move. And some did leave. But the real thing was, the real harm to the East German economy was that so many young people had left. And so what is the solution? Don't let them leave again. And it occurred in August of 1961. Okay? Here's the details. It's spelled out, and actually it's a fascinating history, and it's very sad, actually. And it's emblematic of what is going on in the Cold War and what communism is about. Yeah? It's significant because it's a meeting of the top two leaders. Khrushchev tries to get his way with Kennedy, and in one sense, Kennedy didn't impress Khrushchev. In fact, Khrushchev's attitude toward Kennedy was enhanced by how Kennedy came across at the summit. He looked to Khrushchev to be young, perhaps unprepared, and so forth. You have to be careful about that. Like, anybody know how the summit went, say, between Donald Trump and the North Korean leader? Did they have an agreement reached ahead of time? A substantive agreement reached ahead of time? Now, I think it's fair to say that Trump looked at that and was like, I can win him over with my talents and charisma the same way I have been able to do that at various different business dealings, in his career. It didn't quite work out that way. What would be the number one thing we would like North Korea to actually agree to that we can get on paper? Exactly. Quit nuclear testing and weaponry and all that sort of missiles. No, they don't want to give that up, even in exchange for the United States normalizing trade relations and helping them economically and so forth. North Korea, all of their leaders, have felt like they need to have a strong strategic deterrent. In this case, it's nuclear weapons. So, I mean, Trump was not accurate in thinking perhaps that he could win over the North Korean leader, because the North Korean leader is looking at it and going, no. So, I mean, they smiled and they said nice things to each other and shook hands and so forth, but, I mean, yeah, there was nothing that really solid that came out of that summit. Okay? So, nothing really solid came out of the Vienna summit other than Khrushchev thinks that Kennedy is a pushover and it's going to go all the way into 1962. Okay? 1961, let's get it. August 13, 1961. Okay? One day after the Soviet and East German forces are mobilized, the border is closed. It's on a Sunday. It's on a Sunday, so it's kind of a quiet time. It's sort of like if they're going to do something really big, pick a day, there's not a lot of traffic moving this way and so forth. And they shut it off like early in the morning. No more transit of people into East Berlin or out of East Berlin. Write that down. No more can German people just go in and out of East Berlin. Why not? Because they built the early stages, it was a barbed wire barricade. And then, like, within days, they'll start erecting, like, I don't know, blocks. And eventually, they'll build a significant wall. Now, who could? Anybody got the answer to this? Who could still, and did, and had the right to, go into East Berlin? Interesting question. Who could? Here's a hint. Who could, as a result of the four-party agreement that ended the World War II? Who had the right to go into the other parts of German territory? Whose military? That's correct. The United States military, the British military, the French military. Now, not the whole military force, but certain emissaries and people and so forth, they could go in, and they did. We insisted on that. That's part of the agreement. So when a U.S. official shows up at the East Berlin border, can they go in? Yes, make sure you write that down, because the rights and access of American military and State Department officials did not change as a result of the Berlin Wall. Do you understand that? It did not change. So who was affected by the building of the Berlin Wall? Germans. And particularly, which direction do you suppose, as that thing was being built up, which direction do you suppose more people looked and said, whoa, I better act now before that thing is completely in place, because, man, there's no way to get over that. Is it going to be East Berliners trying to get out or West Berliners trying to get in? East Berliners trying to get out. Write that down. Now, of course, you get this from Soviet Union and East Germany and so forth. They're like, we're building the wall to protect us. That's what they would tell the people, fake news. That's what they would tell the people as a justification. Like, really? We're going to buy that? Well, nobody's really trying to get in. There's other people trying to get out. And you'll see in the film all kinds of dangerous, dare-do things that are people, like, for example, there was initially some buildings that were right on the Berlin Wall. And so you'll have people trying to get out of, like, second, third story, like, windows down onto the sidewalk, which is in West Berlin. And you'll have, like, East Berlin officials grabbing hold of, like, there's this one image of, like, a little old lady who's, like, trying to get out, and they've got her arm here, and then the West Berliners are at the bottom, and they're, like, trying to reach and so forth. And they got a way to catch her when she comes down. I mean, it's kind of crazy. East German solution, shortly thereafter, any building along the border that gets torn down. And actually, I remember going to Berlin with students, and there was a church that was right near the Berlin Wall. It wasn't next to the Berlin Wall, but it was close enough, and it was amazing. It was like only really a couple of years before the Berlin Wall was taken down, in 1989, they destroyed the church. They're like, it's too close. This is inside East Berlin. So eventually you'll have this wall all the way, in a sense, around West Berlin. That's the Berlin Wall. And on the West Berlin side, could people approach it? Yeah. And they painted it, and they put all kinds of various different things and so forth. What would happen if you approached the wall on the East Berlin side? They would shoot you. Okay? They patrolled it. It was mined. I mean, there's this one story you'll see. How many of you guys have watched the video already? How many of you guys? Okay, so watch it after this. There's one story that's told. This lady tells this story of a young man who tried to get out of East Berlin and to West Berlin, and he gets shot. And he's just like lying there, dying slowly. The people in West Berlin can't do anything about it. Make sure you write this down. They weren't going to come over into West Berlin to help those people get out. And this guy died right there. And there's going to be other people who will die trying to get out. There's going to be other people who will get out. And there's going to be some pretty amazing escape efforts. Yeah. Yeah, there is. I mean, you got to be very, very clever and so forth. But the East Berlin border guards, they're like, their orders are quite clear. Shoot to kill. Got it? And that's what they would do. Very, very sad. The irony, though, is, and this is pointed out in the film, building the Berlin Wall stabilized the situation. Write that down. It stabilized the situation. Sucked to be an East Berliner or East German stuck behind the wall. But no more are you going to have sort of this question of, will the United States, Britain, France go to war with the Soviet Union? Because the Soviets built the wall, but they didn't attack West Berlin anymore. I mean, they weren't like trying to take over West Berlin. And will the United States, Britain, or France, besides criticizing the Soviets and the East Germans for shooting people that are trying to get out, will we actually send our military in to help those people? No, so add that to your list. Places where the United States military is not going to go in to help people. Hungary. It's part of the Soviet sphere. All those East European countries. And anyone who can't get out of East Berlin. We're not going to go in. The stakes are too high. Jacob, what would happen if we tried to go in? Potentially. Yeah, so if they shoot us, then we shoot them, and potentially what could happen, Melody? Nuclear war. Do we want nuclear war? No. Do we know what nuclear weapons do to people? Yes. Have we ever used nuclear weapons against people? Yes, we did. Okay? Now, within 3 days, the barbed wire is replaced. The West Berlin people are not feeling too good. Write down his name, Willy Brandt. It's not too many names that you have to see. It's in the handout. Willy Brandt. Later we'll say he is the top West German official. He's going to get to the position of chancellor. But at this stage in his career, he is the West Berlin mayor. He is the mayor of West Berlin, Willy Brandt. And he sends a message to the United States and other allies. He's like, okay, we're not feeling too good right now. This isn't much fun. It's kind of like nobody is allowing anyone to come in. The only people who can come in, no more. I mean, family were cut off. People were like, they're like, well, I live in this part of Berlin, and I live in that part of Berlin. One's in West and one's in East. And so, we shop in the West, but, we go visit Grandma in the East. They were cut off. There was no easy provision for family to go visit each other. And West Berliners were really upset about that. Now, they knew the United States had their back, but the morale thing was a problem. So, here's some things that Kennedy does. First, Kennedy orders a show of force. Now, when I mean show of force, basically, it's actually Kennedy orders U.S. troops that have the right to go into East Berlin to do that, just to make sure that the East Berliners and East Berlin government and the Soviets and so forth know that we have that right. Okay, well, that's nice. President Kennedy also sends some very important people. Let's see if you can identify. There's going to be 2 very important people that are going to come and do a goodwill tour to West Berlin and give speeches and go rah, 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 and we got your back, and maybe say a few key phrases in German. Let's see. On this particular visit, it's not going to be Kennedy. Later it will be Kennedy, and he'll give his Ich bin ein Berliner speech. Let's see if you can identify. If you're not the president going, who might be a very good, high-ranking person to send? What'd you say? Vice President. Write it down. The Vice President is sent. In fact, write down the Vice President's name. Who was the Vice President for Kennedy? Actually, his name is up there. Not because he's the Vice President, but because when Kennedy's shot and killed, Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson. He was a major figure even before he became Vice President. He was the top Democrat in the United States Senate. Very, very skilled at getting legislation through the Senate. An arm twister, a wheeler dealer. Very, very clever that way. So he went, and let's see if you can go back to thinking. Who was the hero in the United States military? I want to say he was retired at the time of the Berlin Wall crisis. But who was the hero in charge of the Berlin airlift? Who was the general in the, I want to say like the Army Air Corps? Remember, he used to smoke cigarettes all the time. It's okay if you don't remember. But write his name down. It's actually listed in the handout as well. Lucius Clay. General Lucius Clay. And the West Berlin people love him. They're like, yay, send Johnson, send Clay. You can do one better. How about you come yourself someday, Kennedy? And he will. Okay? He will. Key areas of transit. There's certain locations where you actually can transit one versus the other. Anybody know what is the name of that key location for the U.S. sector in West Berlin over into the Soviet sector? It's a checkpoint. It's Checkpoint Charlie. Been there. Checkpoint Charlie, yeah. And there was a time there in the early stages where the United States actually sent some tanks up to the front area of Checkpoint Charlie. And of course, what's the Soviets going to do? They're going to have their tanks, all right? So what do you want to be, Ellie? You want to be the Soviet tanks or the U.S. tanks? You guys are going to be the Soviet tanks or the U.S. tanks? Take your pick. You're the Soviet tanks. We're the U.S. tanks. Yeah! And we come up, here's the line. We come up right here. And this is very interesting. We come up and we're like, vroom. We pull right up. The U.S. tanks to send a message. We're here. And then what do we do? It's like that scene from, have you seen Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Have you guys Guardians of the Galaxy things? where they all decide that they're going to do something about it, right? And as they make the commitment to Star-Lord or whatever his name is, they all stand up, right? And then Rocket, he's the last one. He's like, okay, I'll join you. And here we are, a bunch of idiots standing around, looking stupid or something like that. Well, that reminds me of what happened at Checkpoint Charlie. Here's the American tank pointing its guns. And what are you going to do, Soviet tanks? What are you guys going to do? You going to pull up? Who's going to fire? Is anyone under orders to fire? Has anyone got an itchy trigger? Is this going to be like Lexington and Concord, the shot heard around the world? It started the American Revolution? No. So here's the tricky part. How long are you going to stay in that position? Have you ever been in some kind of a thing with somebody where it's like you try and save face, right? So, all right, we want you to back up first, but you're not going to, so we're going to sort of encourage you to back up. We'll go back a couple of inches. Now, what are you going to do? You're not going to? I'm going to move forward again. It's like I'm getting hungry here. I'm sitting in my tank, and I want to go back to the base, and I want to go to, get some food. Eventually, they sort of back off a bit. There's a little bit of checking each other out. Will the United States and the Soviet Union go to war over the situation in the Berlin Wall? Absolutely not. There you go. They won't do it. They won't do it. We will lament the situation. We will grieve for the people who were killed. We will not interfere. Okay? There's too much at stake. 1963, June 26, write this down. June 26, 1963, John F. Kennedy comes to Berlin, finally. Which part of Berlin? East Berlin or West Berlin? He comes to West Berlin. I mean, hello, he comes to West Berlin. And he gives a speech. It's not a long speech, about 10 minutes or so. He gives a speech encouraging to the West Berlin people. We actually got time for it. This is good. It's right by the Brandenburg Gate. Let me just tell you this. Kennedy's speech, later Reagan's speech, by the Brandenburg Gate, which is the big triumphal, gate that was built by the Kaiser after they won the Franco-Prussian War and Germany became united. And so they had, that was the centerpiece. That was right on the border. And so you couldn't go through the Brandenburg Gate unless you were a very special person. And that's where they give the speech. That is a famous place for three things. 1, Kennedy's speech. 2, Reagan's speech. 3, another American visited there in a hotel right near, and I remember when I was traveling there, the tour director pointed out this hotel where apparently a famous American, let's see, raise your hand if you know this, a famous American who had a son, an infant son, was staying in one of the hotel rooms, and it had a balcony, and a whole bunch of fans were out there below, and he held the son out. You know who that was? Who was it? I'll give you a clue. He's not alive anymore. He was in, who? It's like Mufasa. It does sound like a Lion King sort of a thing. And people looked in there the Lion King yay. Anyway, but in this situation, people are like, he's going to drop that kid, and it's going to go down three stories and, splat. No, but he didn't drop him. Who was it? I'll give you a clue. Hee. That's right, Michael Jackson. He did. And that child is still alive today. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right, here's Kennedy. Come on, let him speak.
I am proud to come to this city as the guest of your distinguished mayor, who has symbolized
Willie Brandt.
throughout the world the fighting spirit of West Berlin. And I am proud
How much longer would he live?
to visit the Federal Republic
It's August.
with your distinguished chancellor,
He's killed in November.
who for
Same
30
year.
years has committed Germany to democracy and freedom and progress, and to come here in the company
You can't hear a translator? There may be people who are, eventually, the German education system is so focused on training people how to speak English, that's not even an issue. But yeah, there'll probably be some older people that don't know. Oh, there you go, Lucius Clay, former general, now wearing a tie, so retired.
2,000 years ago, the proudest poet was Civis Romanus Sum.
Latin.
Today, in the world of freedom, the proudest boast is, Ich bin ein Berliner. I am
Berliner.
I appreciate my interpreter translating my German. There are many people in the world who really don't understand.
Over 6 billion.
Or say they don't. What is the great issue between the free world and the communist world? Let them come to Berlin. There are some who say that communism is the wave of the future.
Really?
Let them come to Berlin.
Is it? There are people today that say that?
And there are some who say,
Hope not. Oh, come on. Give me no. Skip that ad. Good grief. Pop-ups.
in Europe,
Interrupting the president. Jeez.
we can work with the communists. Let them come to Berlin.
Let them come to Berlin. Let them come to Boise. Wipe your desks.
There are even a few who say that it's true that communism is an evil system, but it permits us to make economic progress. Lass sie nach Berlin kommen.
Oh, some more German. Lass sie nach Berlin kommen. Let them come to Berlin. It's not just Ich bin ein Berliner.
Freedom has many difficulties.
If you want, you can start wiping down now if you want. I'll keep JFK playing. Oh, we don't have to put a wall up to keep our people in. Ooh, yeah, seriously.
I want to say, on behalf of my countrymen who live many miles away on the other side of the Atlantic, who are far distant from you, that they take the greatest pride, that they have been able to share with you, even from a distance, the story of the last 18 years. I know of no town, no city that has been besieged for 18 years that still lives with the vitality and the force and the hope and the determination of the city of West Berlin. While the wall is the most obvious and vivid demonstration of the failures of the communist system, for all the world to see, we take no satisfaction in it, for it is, as your mayor has said, an offense not only against history,
The wall is a sign of failure, not success.
separating families, dividing husbands and wives and brothers and sisters, and dividing a people who wish to be joined together. What is true of this city is true of Germany. Real right of free men, and that is to make a free choice. In 18 years of peace and good faith, this generation of Germans has earned the right to be free, including the right to unite their families and their nation.
Will Germany be united eventually?
With goodwill to all people.
Yeah. Right about the end of the Cold War. Okay, you guys can go if you... Okay, and we'll stop it right there.